Today, I'm going to share a story that happened on a business class flight. It's a tale of prejudice, arrogance, and a profound lesson about respect. That flight started like any other. The business class cabin was filled with soft lighting, the quiet murmur of well-dressed passengers, and an atmosphere of luxury. But everything changed when an elderly woman, wearing an old outdire, stepped into the cabin. Her attire, with its faded threads and worn fabric, seemed out of place here. That's when the flight attendant appeared. The young flight attendant, her face perfectly made up, smiled lightly but couldn't hide her annoyance. Her voice rang out, "Madam, this is business class. Please return to economy." The elderly woman didn't respond immediately. Instead, she silently retrieved her ticket from her worn-out handbag. But rather than taking the ticket, the attendant's eyes fixated on her outdire. She frowned and added, with a colder tone, "Your outfit, I don't think it's appropriate for this cabin." These words not only unsettled the elderly woman but also caught the attention of the surrounding passengers. Some began to look at her curiously, while others chuckled, as if they had found some entertainment in the situation. Still, the elderly woman remained silent. She simply held out her ticket again, her hands trembling slightly. Instead of inspecting the ticket, the attendant took a step closer and remarked sarcastically, "That outfit must have come from a thrift store, right? I bet it's worth less than a meal in this cabin." The situation intensified when the flight attendant called the captain. The captain, a middle-aged man, entered the cabin with an authoritative air. He asked briefly, "What's going on here?" The flight attendant eagerly explained, her voice filled with confidence. "Captain, this woman does not have a business class ticket but insists on sitting here. I've asked her to return to economy, but she refuses to cooperate." The captain said nothing further. He reached out to take the ticket from the elderly woman, but as soon as he read the words, "business class," on it, his eyebrows furrowed. His expression shifted from surprise to shock, then to remorse. He looked up at the woman, bowed his head, and said, "Madam, you are the founder of this airline, aren't you?" His words struck the cabin like a thunderclap. The flight attendant froze, her lips trembling but unable to form words. The passengers who had earlier been amused or indifferent now lowered their gazes. The elderly woman, despite the humiliation she had endured, remained calm, but her eyes were no longer gentle. They had become sharp, cold, and commanding. The elderly woman looked straight at the flight attendant and asked, "If I were not the founder, would you think it was right to insult me?" The question wasn't just directed at the flight attendant. It echoed in the minds of everyone in the cabin. The attendant, now visibly trembling, couldn't respond. One male passenger, who had earlier laughed, stood up and bowed his head, saying, "I apologize for not stepping in earlier. I was wrong." The elderly woman nodded slightly and replied, her voice calm but firm, "It doesn't matter whether you know who I am. What matters is that every person, whether wearing an old outdire or an expensive suit, deserves respect." Turning to the flight attendant, she asked gently, "How long have you been working in this job?" 3 years, the attendant stammered. 3 years, the woman repeated thoughtfully. "And in those 3 years, how many people like me have you insulted? How many people have endured your disdain simply because they didn't fit your idea of worthy?" The flight attendant didn't answer, tears streaming down her face. The captain, trying to defuse the situation, intervened. "We will take immediate action. The flight attendant will be suspended as soon as this flight lands." The elderly woman raised her hand to silence him. She spoke, "This isn't about me, it's about the need for change. What needs to change is not just this one person but the entire mindset and way of working across your staff." The elderly woman returned to her seat, her eyes still bright and sharp. The entire cabin remained silent. No one looked at her with judgment anymore. Instead, they now felt respect and shame. And so, the flight continued, but no one in that business class cabin was the same as before. The woman's words had left a profound impact, not just on the flight attendant but on everyone. Respect is not a privilege. It is a basic right for all human beings. This story, as you can see, is not just about an incident on a flight. It reflects a greater issue about how we judge others based on appearances. And if you take anything away from this story, let it be this: respect is the easiest gift to give but also the most valuable one.